Hey there, YouTube. Welcome to the first episode of the Prodigiously Wizard podcast. Why, yes, I did kind of go out of my way to come up with as pretentious and nerdy a name as I possibly could. I figured I'd go with something wizard for my channel name, and yeah, Pretty Wizard wasn't good enough. I liked the joke, but just, the word pretty wasn't good enough, so I went for Prodigiously. Yeah, no, is that interesting? Probably not. So, for anybody who's still here, I figured we'd start out on a safe topic. Maybe too safe. Something a lot of people have, I don't know, thoughts on one way or the other. Maybe people are just sick of them by this point, but so far it seems like no. But superhero movies, we're kind of going to talk about what has happened in terms of superhero movies this year and sort of what's coming up. This is just me alone. I have no guests. Sorry, I don't. I don't have a whole lot of talent I can call on as podcast guests yet. Which isn't to say I wouldn't mind having some friends on here, but let's try this out solo at first. See how we like it. So, let's talk about what came out at San Diego Comic-Con this last weekend, since, I don't know, that's probably old news by this point, but I didn't get this out 3 days ago. The Thor Ragnarok trailer, which is probably the nearest and dearest to my heart out of things that came from San Diego Comic-Con. This alleviated a little bit of my fears that Thor Ragnarok was just going to be Planet Hulk under a different name for legal reasons. But, in the trailer, which, spoilers if you haven't seen the trailer, but I assume you have. I'll call out various spoiler warnings as I get to anything pertinent. So for the trailer, they show the Fenris Wolf and they show Surtur. So there is at least a little bit more Ragnarok stuff going on than just a name, than just, oh yeah, Hela does stuff, and therefore it's Ragnarok. And yes, I have seen all the like Easter egg videos where people are claiming or hoping or whatever that they've already shown a little nod to Beta Ray Bill in the trailer. I don't 100% know if I buy that that's Beta Ray Bill, but I kind of hope it is. For anybody who, this is the first thing of mine you're tuning into, I have a little bit of a personal interest in Beta Ray Bill showing up in Thor Ragnarok. As I built a costume of him, and he's one of my favorite characters. He's just an interesting dude all around, and I figure with Thor Ragnarok, they're either going to just kind of tease that he's in the universe somewhere, or they're actually full-blown going to have him show up and help, be part of Thor's team he's recruiting to do stuff. Probably the former rather than the latter, but hopefully that means he can show up later in a more thoroughly explored, there's a good word for that somewhere, but I don't know what it is. So yeah, I'm reasonably looking forward to that. Now, the other thing I watched out of San Diego Comic-Con is I watched the teased footage for Avengers 3 Infinity War. Before it got taken down, I watched some of the shaky cam footage of that, and that does look interesting. Again, if you haven't watched any of my stuff, I build Thor costumes. I've built a few of them and kind of came to the conclusion that for now I was going to skip the Thor Ragnarok costume. And from what little I can tell, I think that Thor's costume is slightly different is going to be different in Avengers Infinity War. Like the cut of the leather on his chest is going to be different, besides all the gladiator trappings not being there. So again, I should have called out spoilers immediately, for, if you hadn't seen that or didn't want spoilers for that Avengers Infinity War trailer. But I don't think anybody is as concerned with what Thor's wearing as I am. That's probably kind of my little niche there. I mean, maybe a few people, but there we go. This is my unique perspective on things. That's why you tune in to this as opposed to everybody else who's already talked about this trailer, is for what Thor is wearing and whether or not Beta Ray Bill has shown up. Yeah. Personally, my money is on, this is pure speculation. And this is kind of, speculation for how Ragnarok's going to end and Infinity War is going to kick off. Is I personally think Thor is not going to get Mjolnir back by the end of Ragnarok. I think Mjolnir getting broken during Thor Ragnarok is kind of an extension of the same general idea of what Captain America Civil War was, where they really want the Avengers to be starting Infinity War with the chips, when the chips are down. So the Avengers are divided, and one of their heaviest hitters, Thor, isn't hitting as hard as he used to. So, and there have been some set photos where it's possible Mjolnir will show back up in Infinity War, but that's guesses and speculation. That's nothing but nothing. But circling back to Thor's costume, my personal little thing I'm invested in, he didn't have a cape in the trailer footage, and I'm betting if he gets Mjolnir back, he's just gonna grow a cape again, like he did in Thor: The Dark World, and he did that in the first Avengers movie too, where he's kind of running around in his half armor for most of the movie, and then just before Act 3 kicks off, he picks up Mjolnir, gets struck by lightning, and he gets a costume change, like the most badass of Disney princesses. I shouldn't say that. That will start arguments of who is the most badass Disney princess, and that is its own discussion. But yeah, I think I'm looking forward to Infinity War. I think their big, trilogy thing they've been building up to with Infinity War, I'd like to think the general format of Marvel movies will adapt or change a little bit after that, where people don't enjoy feeling like they have to tune into every movie, so maybe it'll be more the thing of, you can get away with just sort of following a movie with your favorite character, and then you're not lost when you bounce back into like a big Avengers group movie that you're just kind of fine with that. So yeah, that's talking about the trailers that have come up, at least the ones that I'm personally more invested in. I mean, there was another Justice League trailer, but I am admittedly not as much of a DC fan as I am a Marvel fan. It's not completely one-sided. I love the spit out of Wonder Woman, certainly, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But yeah, Justice League isn't really tickling me right now, which, man, a lot of people harp on Batfleck for that, and that's not the problem I have with it. There is some of that where it's getting rushed, and there's some of it where, yeah, this is clearly to make money, and man, it's not like any other movie was made to make money, but this, it does feel a little bit more rushed and a little bit less organic and just a little bit more cynical. And yeah, I mean, heck, I'm gonna watch Justice League when it comes out, almost certainly, but I'm not looking forward to it the same way I am some other movies. Yeah, can't think of any other trailers that came out that I have any specific thoughts on. But as for the superhero movies that have already come out, which, I mean, superhero movies is a really vague list, and I'm certainly not cracking down hard one side or the other on I'm talking about every single superhero movie or every single comic book movie or whatever, but when Logan came out, I kind of wanted to start this whole podcast thing then and talk about Logan, because I had thoughts about Logan that are a little controversial, I suppose I'd say, that I haven't really heard anybody else talking about. Now, to start off, before the internet gets mad at me for quote unquote not liking a modern comic book movie masterpiece, I did enjoy. Well, I didn't enjoy Logan. I respect Logan. I think it's a really good movie, and I'm not just saying that to cover my butt. I thought it was a good movie. I thought it needed to exist, and it was a Wolverine story that I felt should happen, and I'm glad it was up on the big screen. But there was something that happened in that movie that it just kind of happened, and they didn't talk about it, and it's kind of effed up. Oh, by the way, X-23 is also one of my favorite characters, so yeah, no, seeing that little girl go psycho in that movie was also like a huge tick in that movie's favor. But what it is so what happens to Charles Xavier in that movie is and they don't, I think they brush right up against saying it, but they don't ever actually outright say that he had his psychic seizure and killed all of the major X-Men. Now, the problem is not that happened. Now, that is... I mean, it's super gritty and dark and, all that. And again, that's great. That's fine. It's the sort of thing where Logan is a survivor, and he was always going to be the last man standing. That's just kind of in his nature, and that's always the way he's written. And there is certainly something really interesting to Charles Xavier kind of being the person who kicks that off. But that is super brutal, and it's super sad. And the fact that it's brutal and sad is not the problem. But what it is this man who devoted his entire life to the well-being of mutants. The problem with painting Charles Xavier as a saint is in the comics, yeah, they've questioned that and they've called that out. In the movies, he's still pretty much a saint, but I mean, this guy's done a lot for the well-being of mutants and children everywhere in this fictional universe. And then through the happenstance of fate or whatever, he gets whatever thing is going on that he goes psychic crazy and he melts their brains. So he kills these people that he looked at as his children. He kills these people who he felt were his children, and this incident is used as justification for shadowy evil forces to enact mutant genocide or whatever they do with high fructose corn syrup in this movie. That's all really, really horrible. And they don't really talk about it. And I certainly respect that a thing is more horrible when you don't examine all the details of it. The movie monster is much more horrifying when you're only seeing a silhouette, when you're only catching glimpses of it out of the corner of your eye. But again, this is a good man who devoted his life to making things better, who, as a plot device, murdered his children, and this incident was used to turn his entire life legacy back against itself. That is just really harsh and really heavy, and it's fine if you do that, but the fact that you do that and you don't talk about it seems to indicate that it's not important. Now, yes, this is Logan's story, certainly first and foremost, which it is. I mean, to kind of go back on that statement a little bit, this is the story of the two X-Men characters through, kind of that first set of movies that most people care about. So it is Logan's movie, but it is kind of also Professor Xavier's movie, too. I mean, that's why he's there, is because people want to know what's going on with him. But, man, just the fact that they have that there and they do something so horrible to that character, and he isn't even, he isn't able to come to terms with it through the movie. He's just drugged out of his mind to keep, this psychic seizure thing under control, that he is just kind of not aware of what he did. They really seem to heavily indicate that, and he comes to this realization like halfway or 2/3 of the way through the movie, just as the clone of Wolverine stabs him through the chest. So he doesn't get to learn from this experience. He doesn't get to grow from this experience. He doesn't even really get to react to this experience. Just this horrible thing happens to him, and that's it. It's not about what Professor X does about this or learns from this. It's about what Logan does and learns about this horrible thing being done to, or, I say to because, I mean, I'm kind of looking at it as the writers doing this to Professor Xavier, which, I mean, that's dangerous territory. But, yeah, I look at this as being done to Professor Xavier by writers just so Logan can be sad about it. And, there has been stuff like that in comic books before, and there's been a lot of pushback towards it. Now, there was pushback particularly because it was, women who weren't really allowed to be characters, and they were there only to have horrible things happen to them. The whole girl in the fridge thing. And certainly Professor Xavier is not a woman who was not allowed to be a character. He had plenty of time to be a character, but does that make it better or worse? Just like purely from a narrative standpoint, not from a, women's rights standpoint, because I'm looking at this as a story, not as, man, I hope I didn't just make anybody angry with that. I apologize if I did, but that's what's got me hung up on Logan. It was a good movie. Again, I wouldn't say I enjoyed it. I'm glad I watched it. And yeah, I think that's the first time I've cried in a theater. I will go ahead and just cop to that, where at the ending, I'm a little misty-eyed, and then X-23 turns the cross into an X, and that was when I lost it into full-out crying. So, whatever that's worth. I don't own a copy of Logan because I don't know as I feel like watching it again. I probably will at some point, but man, that's my hang up on Logan. That is my controversial opinion on Logan. It's like, if you're going to do something that horrible to Professor X, examine it in your movie. And, just examine it. Don't pretend it doesn't matter. Jeez. It's just cold, man. Yeah, that's probably about the most controversial opinion in anything I'm going to bring out here. Everything else is probably going to be pretty boilerplate. I mean, for the other movies that came out this year, you had Wonder Woman, which it's a pretty safe thing to say that is the best DC Universe movie to come out, period, so far. I mean, their live-action stuff. I do enjoy their animated movies. Those are actually really pretty good. I'm glad that they're doing something really cool with those, where they sort of have their own separate universe for that, where each movie works pretty well as a standalone, but they all kind of interconnect with each other just a little bit. And I sort of wish some other franchises, and I hate the word franchise, I kind of wish other things would do that. Cough. Transformers. Cough. Covered that up pretty well. But yeah, no, Wonder Woman was just so good. And I mean, I had heard just before I sat down that the high point of the movie was not at the very end of the movie. So that was kind of spoiled for me. And cards on the table, I did not watch all of the last fight in the movie. So kind of spoilers for Wonder Woman if you haven't seen it yet. Yeah, my bladder was exceptionally full, as I needed to drink much caffeine to stay running to see the movie. So yeah, I basically waited for things to go down with her boyfriend, and then I was like, well, I figured that'd happen. Better go hit the head. But yeah, no, that scene where she comes out of the trenches, like halfway through the movie, was definitely one of those sort of things where I had the thought of this right here is the kind of thing movies are made for, because I was wholly and entirely like invested in that moment in a way that I kind of wish some other movies had grabbed me. Yeah, where and definitely one of the other things people had said that I think I wholeheartedly agree with is Gal Gadot or Gadot. I heard from Adam Savage that that's actually the right pronunciation, so I'll take his word for it. Gal Gadot was like the best casting decision since Robert Downey Jr. for Tony Stark, and she definitely has that element where in some of the Wonder Woman comics they've described Wonder Woman as someone you immediately fall in love with. And definitely, as far as a movie character, I ended up crushing on Wonder Woman pretty hard for that movie. So I think they nailed that really pretty well. And the costume design in that, man, there is so much good to talk about Wonder Woman, just in terms of how it was, how not exploitative it was, how it was exactly what it needed to be, while also being a fantastic movie. Where, yeah, again, none of that's controversial, none of that's new. It's all. I guess I'm just one of the sheep. And Guardians 2, which, I mean, that's been long enough since that came out that I don't remember like a play-by-play of a lot of things I wanted to talk about. But in terms of being another Marvel movie, it is kind of cool that the Guardians as a team have this different dynamic than the Avengers. Again, spoilers for Guardians. Sorry, a lot of this is spoilers for everything, but I figure you guys know what you signed up for. Where they have very much a family dynamic, where the Avengers are just kind of, co-workers hanging out together or something. And they do, I mean, it's not really subtle. They very much kind of call attention to that. They kind of put it on its face. But everybody kind of gets a chance to have a little bit of an arc, or at least to have relationships with each other develop. Except Drax. Drax kind of sort of stays where he's at, but Drax had a pretty big arc in the first one, so sort of him just kind of being where he's at, he's doing all right. And man, did Drax steal the show. I do like me some Drax. So yeah, let's talk about Spider-Man Homecoming for a bit. Again, I'm not really going to have anything groundbreaking to say on that. I have no idea what I'm sitting at on time. I can't see the readout from here. But yeah, I didn't have any time frame in mind for this. I figured I'd just sort of talk until I ran out of things to talk about. Spider-Man movies are a little bit funnier since we've had, 3 different live action iterations on Spider-Man on the big screen in our lifetime, particularly, in our adult comic book movie watching lifetime. Now, truth be told, I never watched either of the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Just kind of didn't do that. Taking a drink. Which I did have it on reasonable authority from a buddy of mine, an older friend who's kind of an old school comic book fan. That he kind of liked him. I've heard a lot of negative stuff from every place else, so I'll probably watch him at some point just because, as a comparison. But yeah, no. Kind of skipped straight from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3 to Homecoming, which Homecoming was a really good movie, and that's the sort of thing when you're talking about Marvel movies, they have set a pretty high bar for themselves. And even a Marvel movie that you're not into is still pretty much always arguably well executed. But with Homecoming, I mean, personally, in terms of, because I read the comics and I enjoy me some adult Spider-Man with, hanging out with the Avengers, kind of dealing with his own problems. I'm not as big into high school Spider-Man. I mean, that didn't ruin the movie for me, but it was definitely the sort of thing of it's like, yeah, this isn't the kind of Spider-Man I'm inherently down with. Um, I mean, he played Tom Holland played a really good teenage Spider-Man. He played a really good Peter Parker, and this was definitely a different kind of origin story, a better kind of origin story, where it's not a single like traumatic event and now I'm Spider-Man. It was more I'm Spider-Man. Now I need to figure out how to Spider-Man. So that was really nice for a movie, just in terms of giving you a better arc for that. It was kind of a smaller arc. He's definitely not, Avengers Spider-Man yet. Spoilers for Spider-Man Homecoming. Not that I've really spoiled anything yet, but I'll get into more specific details now, so spoilery. But I think his decision at the end of the movie, as much as part of me looked at it really cynically as like, oh no, I want to be separate from the Avengers so I can, kind of just be a Sony movie and sort of be connected to these other things. I don't think it was inherently that, and I definitely think it was more, a ground level kid superhero Spider-Man, uh, which I really want Sony to just kind of lease the rights for Spider-Man out to all the other like superhero things he'd interact with. Like for Fox, I think we'd all like to see Deadpool be a terrible role model for young Spider-Man, and if he's in this kind of loose position, maybe that's workable. And I mean, if it's just Deadpool, then heck, Deadpool can break the fourth wall about it, and everybody will be cool with it. But more than anything, like some of my favorite comics growing up, and definitely when the cartoons did it, I was all over it. But when Daredevil and Spider-Man hang out, that is always a good time, because Daredevil is definitely one of my favorite superheroes. And it really does feel like, they've described Spider-Man as being more a street level superhero, and that's exactly what Daredevil and the Defenders are. And certainly Spider-Man wouldn't necessarily fit in with the universe of ninja murder that is going on in the Defenders right now. I would still totally watch just Spider-Man kind of hang out with Daredevil. And that's the thing, is you don't even have to make it like some movie tie-in or he shows up in the series. Just do it in like a short film, like those little Marvel short films that they've been packaging with their movies for a while, like the one where you find out what happens with the Mandarin and all that. Just have Spider-Man and Daredevil hang out in one of those, and everybody will love it. And it shouldn't, it shouldn't fiddle with anybody's continuity enough for, a paper pusher to be angry somewhere. I don't know. Just like, and that's why I hate the word franchise, is as soon as the business end of it interferes with, man, wouldn't this be a great story to tell, that's where I have problems. But yeah, I kind of got sidetracked off of Homecoming, kind of threading my way back to that. Wasn't Michael Keaton so good in that? I mean, again, not controversial opinions, but definitely it does feel a little bit like Michael Keaton as the Vulture was the best Green Goblin we've seen. And don't get me wrong, I love Willem Dafoe. Heck, just the name Willem Dafoe was enough to get me excited about the live-action Death Note. I just saw that name, watched the trailer, and was like, oh, I need to watch this now. I checked out of that, but I actually have to watch this now. But yeah, no, like, it was the sort of thing of Homecoming wasn't really throwing a whole lot of surprises at you, which is fine, I was still invested in Spider-Man as a character and what was going on with him. But it was the sort of thing where the flow of the movie was as such that when he showed up to his girlfriend's house, you knew something was going to happen. A shoe was going to drop. And then Michael Keaton opens the door and the Vultures are dead and all that. And yeah, so I didn't see that particular thing coming, but I knew that was exactly the moment for a thing to happen. Yeah, it was an enjoyable movie. Again, Marvel, when they're just kind of doing okay, are doing pretty good. It was a good watch. Shoot, now I feel like there was something on that tangent I went off on that I sort of wanted to keep going with, but for the life of me, I can't remember what it was now. Boop-a-doop-a-doop. Shoot. Nothing. Anyway. So definitely there are there are several movies coming out later this year that I definitely need to check out. It's been a pretty good year for movies, I'd say. It's hard to say from one year to another, but like particularly, last week Valerian came out, and even though a lot of people don't necessarily like that as a movie, I think I still want to watch it anyway. I am a sucker for a good-looking movie, even if it's a terrible movie. And let's see, today, I'm pretty sure I'll upload this right after I record it, but today Atomic Blonde comes out, which is another one I want to watch. That one's looked pretty good. And then the week after that, which will actually, that Friday will be the day before my birthday, I gotta go watch The Dark Tower. I have not read any of the books. I haven't read any of the comic adaptations of the books, but it looks like a good movie, and it's nice to go see something where you're not invested in the source material, right? You're not judging it, you're not looking out for anything, you just go to see a movie. Man, there's almost not enough of that anymore, but that's kind of how spoiled we are, is we get all these movies about what we love, and now we're just like, man, now I want to see a movie about something I don't care about. How about that now? That'd be a good time. Oh, shoot, I think that's about everything I wanted to cover in this, generally speaking. There wasn't, I didn't really write too big of an outline for this. But yeah, I wanted to try out podcasting and kind of see what you guys thought of that and if you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know. If not, I'll take your silence in stride. Maybe do a few more of these, see if they get better. I don't know. If not, I'll bounce around back to some of the other things I've been working on. So thanks for your time, guys. It was fun talking about this with you. I will talk to you later.